Once upon a time, in a quaint suburban neighborhood nestled beneath a canopy of ancient oak trees, there lived a young woman named Emily. With her warm smile and gentle demeanor, she was the most sought-after babysitter in the area. Parents trusted her implicitly, knowing their children were in good hands whenever Emily was around. One chilly October evening, Emily received a call from the Johnsons, a family she frequently babysat for. They needed her to watch over their two young children while they attended a late-night function. Emily eagerly accepted the job, looking forward to spending time with the sweet siblings, Lily and Thomas. As night fell and the moon cast eerie shadows across the neighborhood, Emily arrived at the Johnsons' house. Mrs. Johnson gave her the usual rundown of emergency numbers and bedtime routines before bidding her farewell. With the children tucked snugly in their beds, Emily settled down in the living room to wait out the remainder of the evening. She busied herself with homework, occasionally glancing at the clock as the hours ticked by. Around midnight, Emily heard a faint scratching noise coming from upstairs. She paused, her heart racing, and strained her ears to listen. But the noise ceased as quickly as it had begun, and Emily dismissed it as the house settling. Just as she was about to resume her work, a chill swept through the room, causing her to shiver involuntarily. Brushing it off as a draft, she forced herself to focus on her studies. But then, from the corner of her eye, she caught a movement, a fleeting shadow darting across the hallway. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she peered into the darkness. Was it her imagination playing tricks on her, or was there something or someone else in the house? Summoning her courage, Emily tiptoed up the stairs, her heart pounding with each step. She reached the top landing and glanced down the dimly lit hallway. There, at the far end, she saw a door slightly ajar, a faint glow emanating from within. With trembling hands, Emily pushed the door open, revealing Lily's room. The little girl lay peacefully in her bed, bathed in the soft light of her nightlight. Emily breathed a sigh of relief and was about to leave when she heard a voice, a whispered, almost imperceptible murmur. "Emily?" The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end as she turned around, scanning the room for the source of the voice. But there was nobody there, just Lily, fast asleep in her bed, shaken but determined to brush it off as her imagination. Emily hurried back downstairs, eager to distract herself with anything other than the unsettling experience she had just endured. As the clock struck 2 a.m., Emily decided to check on Thomas one last time before the Johnsons returned home. She ascended the stairs once more, the memory of the whispered voice still fresh in her mind. Upon reaching Thomas's room, Emily pushed open the door and stepped inside. The room was bathed in darkness, the only illumination coming from the pale moonlight filtering through the curtains. She approached the bed cautiously, her heart pounding in her chest. And then, just as before, she heard it. A soft, almost inaudible whisper. "Emily." This time Emily's blood ran cold. She spun around, her eyes darting around the room, searching for the source of the voice. But there was nobody there, just Thomas, sleeping soundly in his bed. Terrified but determined to remain composed, Emily quickly retreated from the room and made her way back downstairs. She glanced nervously at the clock. It was almost time for the Johnsons to return. As she waited anxiously in the living room, the house seemed to groan and creak around her, as if it were alive with unseen presences. And then, just as the clock struck 3 a.m., she heard the unmistakable sound of the front door opening. Relief flooded through Emily as she greeted the Johnsons, eager to leave the house and put the night's events behind her. But as she stepped outside into the cool night air, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her from the shadows. And as she turned to lock the door behind her, she heard it once more. The soft whisper of her name carried on the breeze like a chilling echo from the depths of the night. But this time, it wasn't coming from inside the house. It was coming from the darkness beyond. In the heart of a quiet suburban town, where streets curved gently and houses stood like sentinels in the night, there lived a young woman named Claire. With her warm demeanor and nurturing nature, she was the neighborhood's most beloved babysitter, trusted by families far and wide. One stormy evening, the Robinsons reached out to Claire in desperate need of a babysitter. Their regular sitter had fallen ill, and they couldn't find a replacement at such short notice. Claire, always eager to help, agreed to watch over their two children, Sophie and Jack, for the night. As Claire arrived at the Robinsons' doorstep, the sky was painted with streaks of lightning, and thunder rumbled ominously in the distance. Mrs. Robinson hurriedly briefed Claire on the children's bedtime routine and emergency contacts before rushing out into the storm. Left alone with Sophie and Jack, Claire did her best to distract them with games and stories. But as the night wore on and the storm intensified, the children grew restless, their gigglies turning into anxious whispers. Eventually, Claire managed to coax them into bed and settled down in the living room, the only source of light coming from the soft glow of the fireplace. She tried to focus on her book, but the howling wind and the occasional crash of thunder made it impossible to concentrate. As the hours passed, Claire couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She glanced nervously around the dimly lit room, her senses heightened by the eerie atmosphere. And then, from the corner of her eye, she saw it, a shadowy figure lurking in the hallway. Heart pounding, Claire rose from her chair and approached the hallway cautiously. But when she reached the spot where she had seen the figure, there was nothing there, just an empty corridor bathed in darkness. Shaken but determined to dismiss it as her imagination, Claire returned to the living room and tried to focus on her book once more. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered in the air like a thick fog. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from upstairs, followed by the sound of shattering glass. Claire's blood ran cold as she raced up the stairs, her heart hammering in her chest. She burst into Sophie's room to find her crying hysterically, pointing to the window where shards of glass lay scattered on the floor. Trembling with fear, Claire scanned the room for any signs of an intruder, but found nothing amiss. She quickly comforted Sophie and ushered her into Jack's room, where they huddled together, seeking solace in each other's presence. As they sat there in the darkness, the storm raging outside, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone in the house. She felt a presence, a malevolent force lurking in the shadows, watching their every move with sinister intent. Desperate to protect the children, Claire mustered every ounce of courage she had and ventured back downstairs, determined to confront whatever lurked in the darkness. But as she reached the bottom of the stairs, she froze in horror. Standing in the middle of the living room was a figure, a dark, twisted silhouette that seemed to defy the laws of nature. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and its twisted grin sent shivers down Claire's spine. With a gasp, Claire stumbled backward, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew then that this was no ordinary intruder, that they were dealing with something far more sinister, something that defied explanation. As the figure advanced towards her, its form shifting and contorting with each step, Claire knew that she had to act fast. With a trembling hand, she reached for the fireplace poker, her fingers closing around the cold metal with determination. With a primal scream, Claire lunged forward, the poker held high above her head, and as she struck the figure with all her might, it let out an otherworldly howl before dissipating into the darkness, leaving behind nothing but an icy chill in its wake. As the first light of dawn broke through the storm clouds, Claire emerged from the house shaken but alive. She gathered Sophie and Jack in her arms, their faces pale with fear but alive with gratitude. And as they watched the sun rise over the horizon, casting its warm glow upon the world once more, Claire knew that they had faced something truly terrifying that night, something that would haunt them for the rest of their days. In the quiet suburbs of a small town, nestled among towering trees and winding streets, there lived a young woman named Mia. With her gentle demeanor and nurturing spirit, Mia was known as the go-to babysitter for families in the neighborhood. Her calm presence and genuine affection for children made her a favorite among parents and kids alike. One crisp autumn evening, Mia received a call from the Thompsons, a family she had babysat for many times before. They needed her to watch over their infant daughter, Emily, while they attended a last-minute dinner party. Eager to help, Mia readily agreed and arrived at the Thompsons' cozy home just as the sun dipped below the horizon. Mrs. Thompson hurriedly briefed Mia on Emily's bedtime routine and emergency contacts before rushing out the door, leaving Mia alone with the sleeping infant. With the house quiet and still, Mia settled into the nursery, softly singing lullabies to Emily as she drifted off to sleep. As the night wore on, Mia found herself lulled into a sense of tranquility by the rhythmic rise and fall of Emily's breath. But as the clock struck midnight, a strange sensation washed over her, a feeling of unease that prickled at the back of her neck like icy fingers. Brushing it off as mere nerves, Mia tried to focus on her book, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She glanced around the dimly lit nursery, her eyes lingering on the shadows that danced across the walls like silent specters, and then, from the darkness beyond, she heard it, a soft, whispered voice that sent shivers down her spine. "Mia." The sound was barely audible, like the rustle of leaves on a gentle breeze, but Mia knew she wasn't imagining it. Her heart racing, she scanned the room for the source of the voice, but there was nobody there, just Emily, sleeping peacefully in her crib. Torn between fear and curiosity, Mia forced herself to dismiss the voice as a trick of her imagination. But as the night wore on, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if they were trying to tell her something she didn't want to hear. Unable to ignore the voice any longer, Mia tiptoed out of the nursery and into the hallway, her heart pounding in her chest. She followed the sound of the whispers, which seemed to lead her deeper into the darkness, until she reached the door at the end of the hallway. With trembling hands, Mia pushed open the door and stepped into the room beyond. It was a small, cramped space, cluttered with dusty furniture and forgotten toys, a room that seemed frozen in time, untouched by the passage of years. And there, standing in the center of the room, was a figure, a shadowy silhouette that seemed to flicker and fade like a candle in the wind. Its eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light, and its lips moved silently, forming words that Mia could not hear. Paralyzed with fear, Mia watched as the figure advanced towards her, its presence filling the room with a suffocating sense of dread. She tried to scream, to flee from the nightmare unfolding before her, but her voice caught in her throat, stifled by the weight of her terror. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure vanished into thin air, leaving Mia alone in the darkness once more. Trembling and shaken, she stumbled out of the room and into the safety of the hallway, where the whispers faded into silence. As dawn broke over the horizon and the first rays of sunlight streamed through the windows, Mia gathered her things and fled from the Thompsons' house, vowing never to return. But try as she might, she could never forget the haunting whispers that had followed her that night, echoing in the depths of her mind like a dark and terrible secret.